flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Byron, your 8th Major League season, your first All-Star game, and you wrote a piece of history going back-to-back with Giancarlo Stanton. After you saw Giancarlo go deep, did you have a home run on your mind?
I didn't. Kind of just went up there and was like, I can't strike out twice. You know, like in the back of your head, you always got that thought, man, your first All-Star game, you want to get up there and just get a base hit. And, I put a better swing on it than I thought.
Boys, I think we should just clear the deck here before we write that down predictions for a little Byron Buxton and Luis Arraez appreciation moment. Mm-hmm. That was fun last night. I think a lot of people are cynical about all-star games and how they're worthless and boring and this and that, although I think Major League Baseball does a better job. They do a worse job with their overall product than some of the other leagues, but they actually do a better job with their actual all-star game than some of the other leagues do. Absolutely. And it was fun on a huge stage watching Byron Buxton for the first time be healthy and have a great first half. It kind of feels like, this is something that could or should have happened any other time in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. But to watch him and Luis Arraez do Buxton and Arraez things in the All-Star game was a blast last night.
Absolutely. And it was, I'll say this about the All-Star game. I like the fact, and it's not all going to work, but I like the fact they try different things, like the mic'd up thing last night. I saw complaints about that. And look, if you're ever going to do it, that's the time to try it, right? Like, that is exactly the time to, like, test drive that. And you might scale back. I don't know. You might do more. But that was fun. The Buxton thing, I think, again, too, is, and it's why guys like him need to play in a game like that, because they have the potential and certainly the excitement level to showcase exactly what can be fun about baseball. Like he might be batting 215 or something. But the reality is this: how many more exciting players are you going to put in that game than him, right? Like, there's not a lot of guys who it's like, who deserve to go? Andrew Benintendi. If Benintendi, wow, Buxton shouldn't have gone.
Royals.
Well, no, but my point is, in 2022,
Whit Merrifield.
Yes,
I need to see more Whit Merrifield.
Did you see
Whit Merrifield?
Did you see him work the count beautifully there for the Kansas City Royals? But in 2022, if you're gonna sit down and watch that sport, I want to see the best possible talent, right? And we did, and that was fun. It's still a decent game. Like, it's not great. It's not a great game consistently, but it's still a decent game, and it is truly the only All-Star game that holds up, Declan.
Yeah, it's still the best of the four. I think what's so puzzling and kind of still perplexing is how well they do marketing that game and what they're doing in the game, and yet how poorly baseball then markets itself outside of that. Like, and I know this is an extreme example, but like the strategicness of what they did to market that game, what they've always done, and they're miking up players and they're having fun and they're embracing their stars. Okay, why don't you take that idea and then morph it out and make your game more accessible and more fun and market those superstar players more? Like, it's honestly more frustrating because I do think it's the best All-Star game of the 4 major sports. And even the home run derby is still the best, novelty of between the dunk contest, and God, no one watches the Pro Bowl, and Judd and I are hockey nuts, but I'm not going to be watching the skills competition of who's the fastest skater around a hockey rink. Like, if MLB can take those principles of how well they market their all-star festivities and market to the rest of their sport, I think baseball would be in a lot better place, and they wouldn't be in this dweller that they've been in for the last few years.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to make baseball, the actual sport, like the action, as fast-paced and fun as the NFL or the NBA, which is funny because the NFL is actually mostly down periods and then just like a 5 or 10 second burst of a play and then 40 seconds of downtime. So there's actually more downtime between plays in the NFL because there's probably 20 or 30 seconds of downtime between pitches, but there's just so many pitches and it can drag. So you're probably not going to make your sport as fast-paced and exciting, but if you can make it, you use the word accessible. If you can just make it more accessible, and I mean that by stop blacking people out on YouTube TV and, out of market you can access on MLB TV, but in market you can't. Like, they're not even making the games accessible, but then within the games make the players accessible. And that was, like last night was a great example. When you can actually hear, I don't know if they'd ever go to this length during regular season games, but when you have a catcher and a pitcher both mic'd up and they can hear each other, and you're eavesdropping in on their strategy discussions about what pitches they should throw, or, hey, I'm going to drop down sidearm right here, so just be ready for it. And then he drops down sidearm. It's like, that's captivating. You're watching, like, strategy conversations play out. So, I think the presentation was fun, too, last night.
The only thing I don't like, and I actually didn't mind the National League, but the American League jerseys, I'm not saying that they have to go back to the old days, but I think you could do better.
I love those.
Oh, of course, we're gonna old
here we
guy
go.
gonna complain about the uniforms.
I thought the American League.
I
jerseys
bought the hat
could
last
be.
night. I bought the
Did
new
you
black.
really? Okay.
I love
If
that
you
hat.
like
I think
it,
it's
that's all
dope.
that matters.
I thought those were cool uniforms. Yeah. You're just mad because write that down, like 2 years ago, you said they were going to go back to having the traditional, you're just going to wear your jersey. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
I have no recollection of that.
Yeah, you made a prediction from far out that you forgot about. Weird.
Yeah. And I got more and there's more where that's coming from. There's more where that's coming from. You know what? There's not going to be today any CFL predictions, ladies and gentlemen. No Canadian Football League.
Did you guys also have? I was watching Buxton and Arraez last night, and it just solidified even more in my mind. These guys maybe deserve is too strong of a word, but I feel like those guys deserve some reinforcements in the next couple of weeks. Buxton's out there just, hanging with the big boys on a national stage, hitting bombs off all-star pitchers, and Arraez is hitting laser shots at second baseman that, curl into the fetal position.
I love that.
And you got
Judd.
Carlos Correa. Judd had a nice little weekend. Write that down.
Did.
I like
How you might, just based on health and just the general unavailability of Buxton throughout his career, and who knows if Arraez is going to be around long term with the Twins. But like, these guys they're both healthy. They're having these amazing seasons. You got Carlos Correa here one time. I'm not saying everything is perfect with this lineup, but how many times are you going to have the stars align like that? Like two literal all-stars, Carlos Correa, and some young bats mixed in there. Just capitalize. That was my main thing last night coming out of that game. Okay, that was fun. Now, what are they going to do here in the next couple weeks to capitalize on this thing?
Well, and if they don't, I think from the clubhouse to the fan base, what's the message? By now, everybody knows that Correa was planted here. Thankfully, it's fun, by his agent. So if you now say, you know what, we're just not that good, or we're not gonna trade our prospects. I guess my question is this: what is the message to people? And also, when Correa did sign here in late March, it was really surprising. It was exciting. It was fun. Dex went and bought season tickets. And I think a lot of people did. But I think if you do nothing now, the Correa thing is almost counterproductive, because it's this pendulum swing, right? From this, oh my God, you got a shortstop who is an all-world, just unbelievable. And he is great to watch. Like, there has been, I would say this, there's been no disappointment in watching that guy play on a near daily basis. But if months after that, you're going to sort of be like, we're going to peace out here. We might win the AL Central, but that's going to probably be it. I think you've almost sent a more harmful message starting with the Correa signing, which is, even when we have opportunity, we're not going to capitalize because we aren't going to touch our prospects. So yeah, I think it's more like, I think you're right, Phil. I think it's definitely a very poor message sent to Buxton, Arraez, and the clubhouse. But beyond that, I think the entire franchise is basically, if you wave the white flag now with this guy on your team, when it's crystal clear that you need pitching, and by the way, you are partially at fault here for the fact that your pitching is in the predicament it's in. Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to swallow. And keep in mind, too, just from a business standpoint, okay, in this town right now, where it's incredibly competitive for the sports dollar, all right? The Timberwolves are in the deep end of the damn pool now. Like, people are going to be in, and they're going to buy tickets, and it's going to be fun. For how long were the Wolves probably, in the eyes of the Wild, Vikings, Twins, Gophers to a certain point, just like an afterthought of, well, it's the Wolves. Don't have to be concerned about them. The Vikings are the Vikings, so they're the Bigfoot. And the Wild siphons their fan base. But my point is this. If the Twins punt, I think they give everyone a reason to punt. And I don't know that that's a very good idea right now in this climate, both from a competitive standpoint and also from a standpoint of we want to gain interest, and now we are literally telling our fan base to sort of go away.
Well, you bring up the phrase business standpoint, and the last 20 years for the Twins, I do think it from the poll ads down, I think they have had a general sort of 30,000-foot business plan of let's be relevant and in contention as much as possible, and let's constantly, because we're not going to be able to sign a bunch of top-name free agents. It's just, I know there's an expectation sometimes, well, they built the new stadium, and so therefore they should be spending like the Yankees. That's not how it works. And they didn't promise that, by the way. Baseball salaries and payrolls are based on local revenue. It's not like the NFL where Green Bay and the Vikings and the Giants are all pulling in like the same share of the Fox TV deal. Right. So when you're not bringing in top 5, top 10 local revenue, you're not going to be able to spend $200 million on your payroll unless you take a huge bath and you're willing to take a loss, which most billionaires are not willing to do. So that aside, their strategy has been, okay, let's draft and develop as well as we can, and let's be very careful about gutting our pipeline of future young, cheap team-controlled players for the sake of putting more chips on this year's table. And that philosophy goes back for sure to the beginning of Target Field in 2010, and it probably goes back even more so when they became good in the early 2000s. How many times before they got to Target Field and had more money to play with, how many times between 2001 and 2009 did they have a really good team that was like 90 wins, 93 wins, whatever it was, and they just needed like one big splash, one big pitcher, one big this? They did trade for Shannon Stewart one time.
Yes.
Bobby Kielty for Shannon Stewart. And Shannon Stewart was excellent and helped you win a game against the Yankees in the playoffs, made a wonderful catch in the corner, was a great leadoff hitter for you for a couple of years, right? But other than that, they have said repeatedly for 20 years, we would prefer to not take away assets from the future that can help us compete and be relevant for the sake of loading up this year's team. And my issue with that strategy is, in theory, you're saying, well, because we're doing this because we want to maintain relevance on a regular basis. Maybe we're not going to be World Series champions, but at least, damn it, we're going to be interesting and relevant. In the last 10 years, they have finished last place 5 times. And it's not like the Royals or some of these other teams like the Cubs where they make a bunch of trades and gut their farm system for the sake of going for it, and then they pay for it with a 5-year run in the bottom of the division standings. The Twins have finished in last place 5 times since 2011, despite never making those trades at the deadline and never trading their top, second, or third prospect, right? Maybe Brusdar Graterol was a top 5 prospect, but you can count on far less than one hand how many times they've made an all-in, go-for-it trade with a team that's ready to maybe take a step forward. I don't know if they're going to do it in the next couple weeks. I think they kind of we're kind of competing and
right.
We put some butts in the seats and,
right.
Rather than trading Kirilloff or, 2 or 3 top prospects for some win now players and then maybe being terrible in 2 or 3 years, my argument is you might be terrible in 2 or 3 years anyways. So you might as well go for it once.
I think the diehards too are the ones that are like, Jose Moran is clicking right now. Like I couldn't part with Jose Moran. He's got an 850 OPS over the last 35 games, and he was the minor league player of the year last year for the Twins. And Wild fans do the same thing. There's prospect ranking just came out. The Wild have the best prospect pool in the NHL going into this season. Well, they also have insane buyouts against them, and to be honest, 5 of those prospects maybe 2 of them, and it's more likely one of them truly hit their ceilings and are projected as the player they're going to be. So the majority of those 5 prospects in any sport are probably going to not hit their ceilings. And I feel like a lot of casual Minnesota sports fans want to see this team go for it. And instead of just prospect hoarding and holding on to a Jose Miranda when it could get you a legitimate pitcher in return, like that's what I want to see. I've spent my entire life watching Twins losing playoff games. So just once be competent and go all in and get a piece that helps you win a playoff game and then go from there, dude. I don't understand why that's so terrifying to the Minnesota Twins front office.
But I also think it's fair to come back to a very relevant question that now comes up, and the tenure of Falvey has certainly been long enough to justify the question fairly, and it's this: where is the pitching? Like, what happened there? What's happened there? Why are you... I'll ask the question that I asked with Patrick yesterday. Here's what I don't get, all right? You decide at 2 o'clock in the afternoon how long that day's starter is going to go. So, your life is mapped out here. This is not we didn't see this coming. How are you in a predicament where your bullpen is this questionable when you know that if your starters are going to be, for lack of a better term, pseudo openers, they go beyond, a couple, but they don't go a ton, or a lot of them don't all the time. How is your bullpen at the front end then not stronger? And it's not, so how are you going to get there? Are you just going to continue to punt? Because to me, if Falvey was in his first year, right, or second year, and he said, okay, here's the problem. I know how to find pitching. I'm going to find it, but we don't have it yet. I'd say, okay, I don't love this, but I get it. But we are now into the meat of his tenure here. We are deep into this thing. And you clearly have a system that's pretty much in place with a lot of starters where they are going to go a certain amount of time and then they're going to come out. Okay, fine. But that better damn well mean that when you go to the bullpen, you bring in good arms. You bring in, I mean, Devin Smeltzer, in my opinion, I don't feel like he said the right thing, because I was like, how dare you take Devin Smeltzer out? There's justification for it. But Devin Smeltzer, I guarantee you, what he didn't say was, they brought Emilio Pagan in for me. And that's my question. That's the frustration. And if you're now not going to address that, what does that hubris say about your unfounded confidence in your ability to run a team?
Now, I will say, if they do what we are sort of pleading with them to do, which is, hey, be aggressive. Go turn this thing. Maybe you're not going to be able to make enough trades to be on par with the Yankees or the Astros, but give yourself a chance and take advantage of the 1 year you have with Carlos Correa. If they do that, let's say they trade 2 or 3 top prospects that pan out for another team. We can't then sit here and complain about it 2 or 3 years later. I think it has to be with the understanding that, hey, you guys have some grace here. You've finished last place in the division 5 times anyway since 2011, so fans are used to it. You were terrible in the 90s. It's not like you're protecting something here that is just perennial success. You haven't won a playoff game since 2004. So just quit riding the median on this and make a move. By the way, this plea to the Twins is presented by our friends at Aquaside. As we plead with people, clean up your disgusting lakeside areas with Aquaside helping you.
Why doesn't Falvey and Levine take some Aquaside pellets across that bullpen, okay, and remove all that lake weed and muck that's in there, and actually, have a nice clear lake, so when you step into that bullpen, you feel safe and you feel comfortable in it. And if you take that idea from the bullpen and apply it to your pond or lake home, I think it's a good idea too. Aquaside pellets can help you remove that lake weed and algae. It's a do-it-yourself product, and it's a safe product. It's registered with the EPA and the DNR. Go buy your Aquaside pellets now at aquaside.com, aquaside.com to learn more.
Also, a shout out to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. Later on this month, the Federated Challenge happens again, which has raised $44 million for Big Brothers Big Sisters since 2005. And Big Brothers Big Sisters is all about creating mentoring relationships for children facing adversity, resulting in brighter futures, better schools, stronger communities. There are 5,000 children currently in the state of Minnesota that have a big mentor. And if you want to find out how you can contribute or maybe become a big yourself, go to federatedchallenge.org, federatedchallenge.org. Before we get to write that down predictions here, just one last thought. I think a lot of people are looking at this Twins team and saying, hey, look at 87, 91, the Twins weren't that good the first couple months, or hey, the Braves from last year were kind of toiling for a while. And then two things off that. Number one, you can't just compare to the outliers. Look at the 91 team. Then they won 15 games in a row. I don't know that there's a 15-game win streak in here somewhere. And the Braves last year had some really good top-end pitching and then remade their outfield on the fly via trades.
Yes.
And they let like Eddie Rosario, and they didn't trade a top prospect for Eddie Rosario, but he winds up being the NLCS MVP. So like they made aggressive moves and they turned around their whole outfield. They had some injury issues and it worked out well for them. But I don't think you can just sit here and pray that, oh, there's a win streak coming.
Right.
You got to probably make it happen.
Yeah, and as far as if you go in the way back machine, 91, you went from the division title to a playoff series to the World Series. Like now you've got to have far more strategy planned for trying to grind through games. I mean, the playoffs have always been a grind, but we're talking about division series now. We're talking about, so it's a very different thing, and you have to have at least the depth of pitching now. The 87 team basically went Viola, Blyleven, Straker, cross your fingers with Straker, right? But then you went back to Frankie. So like now
Royce laid out the math actually on
it's a different animal.
Rap Brothers. He said that like 70% of the innings thrown in that 87 playoffs were by 2 starting pitchers and 2 relievers.
Right. It's remarkable.
It's not going to happen now.
And if you think the Twins would ever allow that, you have something else coming.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get to it's really going to be a celebration of Judd in the Write That Down session, accountability session coming up. I think you even forgot about, you're celebrating 1 home run, but I think you forgot about another home run
It's a little
also.
TikTok dance. I'm doing a TikTok dance. Capture the screen grab.
Nope, we're good.